Más presents Interesting Women with Ana Valladares, Cuban, Venezuelan American, the CEO of Mujeres Latinas, impulsando Mujeres Latinas. Hola, hello everyone. We are here with our second program of Mujeres Interesantes, Interesting Women. And we have the honor of having Ana Valladares, who is Cuban, Venezuelan American, the CEO of Mujeres Latinas, impulsando Mujeres Latinas. And a small disclaimer, I am part of their board. It's important that you all know that. But, we are honored, and I'm honored to be part of this board because of the work that you're doing. So welcome, Ana Maria.
Thank you, Evelyn, and thank you for having me in this space, especially during the month of women around the world, the month of March, when we celebrate women and their accomplishments. And we value so much that you are part of our board, too.
Thank you.
And that you help us improve the lives of many women in our community. So thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Well, thank you, Ana Maria. And I think that that's exactly what we've been talking about this week, this month. It's been really, really weird because the more I talk this month with women, the more we talk about the importance of supporting, elevating, collaborating with each other. And, that's what Mujeres Latinas has done for a long time. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about what Mujeres Latinas does in a little bit. But before we start, I would love for people to know, who is Ana Valladares?
Well, I was born in Cuba, in a small town outside of Havana, a city more than a town, Camagüey. Mm-hmm. And my family is, a Cuban family that was of very simple origins. However, my grandparents, some of them came from Spain. They arrived in Cuba at 17 years old. Oh. And my grandfather from my mother's side came, and he had nothing, but he built un aserradero in a small town also outside of Havana in Oriente. Mm-hmm. And, he had a family there with my grandmother, and my mother was born there. And it was a simple life and hard work and, just community and family. Mm-hmm. On my other side, my family came from tradition of the, with a great-grandfather who had been a governor of the state.
Oh, wow.
And he was in politics, and he had to flee Cuba at some point and ended up in Central America, in Panama, and had a second life there with a new family. But, that was, and then my grandfather and my grandmother were people who were very involved in the community, and one of them was a journalist. So
a journalist?
Yes. So there was a big tradition in the family about, writing and being a journalist. So that was one of my passions when I was growing up. Uh-huh. And so, yes, that's what my origins are. And then came a time when, by privilege, I guess, that the universe granted me and my family, we left Cuba a couple of years before Fidel came, because my father was employed by the pharmaceutical company, an international pharmaceutical company, and was transferred to Venezuela.
Wow. So that's how you ended up in Venezuela.
Yes.
How old were you?
I was about 2.5 years old when I left Cuba that time. went back for a few more times, but after that, my whole family came to Venezuela. Most of them came to Venezuela. And, it was a typical story of the immigrants coming in with only what they had on,
Yes.
nothing else. They were not allowed to leave with anything. And so they would arrive, and they would arrive in our apartment in Caracas. And, sometimes we had so many people sleeping in cots, really, because we had to provide for them and make sure that they would find work, that they would find housing for them. So it was a special time in my early years, seeing all of this.
It's not easy. It's not
yeah.
easy, no matter where you migrate to,
Right.
to even if you have, help, it's a culture shock. No matter where you go, it's a change. So that's amazing.
But it was interesting because Venezuela back then was a new democratic government. It was a new democracy in Latin America. Everybody was looking up to the Venezuelan model of democracy. And there were so many opportunities, and they were so welcoming to all these different people from different parts of the world that it was easy, in a way, for us to become integrated and, to become citizens of Venezuela. Eventually, things didn't go that well, so as we know.
But may we never forget, with the situation that's happened in Venezuela and the amount of families that have had to go to different places. May we never forget how, in those times, how much they helped other countries.
Yes.
And really it's our turn to give back what they helped us with,
Exactly. And I always say that because it was a very welcoming country, and the people of Venezuela were welcoming all these immigrants and giving them opportunities. So I always think of it as United States of Latin America back then, because it was that kind of situation. What you think is the United States of America has been always welcoming, in a way, immigrants from all parts of the world and giving them opportunities. That was Venezuela back then.
And how long did you live in Venezuela for?
I left my first years, maybe until I was 11. Then I had, again, an opportunity to leave with my father and his work, come to live in the United States. And that was my first experience in the United States. And I came to live in New Jersey. Again, I always mentioned that it's been a life of privilege in that way, because it was in a very good situation, because my father worked for a big corporation, and everything was taken care of for our family. So it wasn't an immigrant like some of the immigrants that we have today in the United States, or back then, that come with nothing and have to really work very hard to have access to certain things.
And you've been a big advocate for
Right.
when they come here. You've been a big advocate
Right.
for that. But then you went back. Did you go back for university or?
I went back, during those years, my teen years, I was in and out of the United States.
Okay.
We went to Latin America, to Mexico. We went to live in Mexico for a while. Then my family went back to Venezuela. I stayed in a boarding school in New York for all my high school years. And then eventually I went back, got married to a Venezuelan, wonderful man, and then left again, Venezuela, for Europe, to study in Europe. And it was really going back and forth and living in Europe, in different countries, in different situations, and then eventually came to the United States.
So what did you study in Europe?
So it was interesting because back in the late 70s, Venezuela was giving these wonderful scholarships That was a government program, Becas de Mariscal Ayacucho, who was one of our patriots. And they were offered to a lot of people. And so people were able to go outside of Venezuela and study master's degrees and doctorate degrees all over the world, wherever they chose really to do. And so I chose with my husband to go and study museum administration because that was something that was needed in the country. And I became the first person who had that degree in Venezuela. Wow. So it was interesting. And so we went to study in Italy, in Florence, Italy, which was a school that was very close to a school that was offered the same degree in Paris through UNESCO. So it was an interesting time, and it was also fun, and it was, you know, another learning experience for me.
How did you appear here in Florida from all of these all this story, and then you're like, I'm here, Florida. Like, because you've been here a very, very long time. And let me say this, like, you know, Ana Valladares, in terms of, you know, South Florida, Broward County, in terms of, I say Mujeres Latinas, doing a lot of, you know, national work and doing a lot of work with, you know, women that are now connecting from different places, not only Florida, but connecting from different places outside of Florida. And I'm just curious to know, you know, I know that your family arrived here and they started doing some, you know, some work here. Can you tell us a little bit, for the people who don't know that history, of how Ana Maria Valladares arrived in Florida?
So I was living with my husband and my first born, my daughter, in Germany. We were actually diplomats for Venezuela in Germany at that time. And so that period ended, and my parents had just moved from Venezuela to Miami, actually to Broward County, and they were semi-retired, and my father bought a pharmacy, which was, you know, back in those days, those were like the drugstore, the mm-hmm. corner drugstore. Mm-hmm. And he bought it in an area in Broward that was it was in an area that's very close to downtown Fort Lauderdale today, but that area had been populated by recent immigrants coming from Mariel, from the boat lift from Mariel.
Wow! So it was at the same time, around the same time as the Mariel.
The Mariel boat, mm-hmm. yeah, lived, and so. It was interesting because these were people that were just coming out of Cuba, and they were in a lot of need, and they were living around that area where that drugstore, corner drugstore was, and it was also, there was a shopping mall, and it was like a shopping mall that served the Hispanic community. So I always say it's part of the history of the Hispanic community in Broward, because there weren't a lot of Hispanic people in Broward back in those days. Mm-hmm. So the population was very, you know, spare. And so it was interesting to see, because I when I arrived, I went to work with Mom in the drugstore and help her out. And she had become, you know, the Doctora Marisa. She wasn't a doctor, but she was called the Doctora Marisa. And everybody would come and ask her, you know, for advice about anything. And my mom had a passion for helping people too. Mm-hmm. And she was, you know, very compassionate. And so people would come and say, oh, I need aspirins for my daughter. And they'd say, I don't have any money. And so you would say, okay, pay me next week, you know, when you get your paycheck, or things like that. So she became that personaje, la Doctora Marisa. And so, you know, and so it was a special experience for me. Mm-hmm. It was totally different than anything I had done before. But immediately I felt a passion for, helping the community and seeing what I could do. And eventually I transferred that into other things that I began to do in the community, especially working with the ESOL population in Broward County schools. And I became a voice for those parents who were immigrant parents. They were Hispanic parents, they were Haitian parents.
So in that moment, just as a reminder for everyone, the public schools did not have any programs for the children. So the children would come here and just kind of, have to start learning in English?
No, they had the ESOL programs in the schools. However, there were there were inequities. There were things that were not working right. Those days were hard because some people would come and they would be put in the program, and it didn't have the support that it needed from the top, meaning from the school board itself. So, there were times where there was a famous lawsuit that came to the state of Florida, and so it allowed some organization for the community to organize the parents to help them have a voice at the school board, and also to demand services for the children and demand equity in some access to certain things that the school system was offering. So it was an interesting time because of that. And I came in at some point through working again as a volunteer in the schools and learning what was happening with those children who were the less fortunate children, and who had all the difficulties of being immigrants or new arrived immigrants, and their parents didn't know the language or couldn't respond for them. So I became a voice for them, and that began a career in service to the community.
Well, a career of service in the community. I believe you served as a board member of the Children's Services Council for over 20 years, appointed by various governors in Florida. I don't know if were you, like, in terms of the Hispanic population that represented that board, how many Hispanics were there when you first appeared as a board member?
So that was an interesting opportunity that came through some good friends in the community who are women that have believed in me and have given me opportunities. And so through a good friend of mine who I value very much, I was able to apply for that board, and I was appointed by then Governor Bush, who was the governor of Florida.
Governor Jeb Bush.
Jeb Bush. And it was a new experiment for Broward, because it was the coming together of a lot of people who were very concerned about what was going on in Broward with services for children, and this created an organization that's a government organization, but it funds itself by the property taxes.
Okay.
So it's allowed to receive funds from your property taxes, and so that fund is then distributed in the community through, grants that are offered to organizations that serves children and families.
Amazing.
So it was a really interesting time also, because it was a new thing, a new government program that was being implemented in Broward.
Wonderful.
which allowed for more funds to come to our community.
And now, we can talk and we'll have to have another conversation. And I think it would be really important because part of the idea with We Are Más is that we inform and educate the community of what's going on, what services exist, what's available, how can they know what's going on in terms of different things that are happening in the community. And part of a group or the organization that's helping with that is Mujeres Latinas, impulsando Mujeres Latinas. I know we have about probably like 8 minutes before this program ends, and I want to make sure we see some special pictures that you brought, and we take a look at them and you share a little bit about that. But could you share with us, about Mujeres Latinas?
So Mujeres Latinas was something that happened organically here in this area of the part of the county where we live in Weston. And it was a big migration of Venezuelan women who arrived about 25 years ago almost. And when they arrived, they had no information. They were privileged people who were living in a nice part of the county, but they needed help. They needed help to understand the system, the educational system for their children, everything that immigrants need when they arrive. And so they got together, and they got together in a park, and they started getting together and organizing themselves as women and trying to figure out what they could do in order to help each other. And so they formed Mujeres Latinas, eventually became a nonprofit organization, 501c3, and it was run by different women from different backgrounds, from different countries, always trying to help elevate the Latino women in our communities. Mm-hmm. And give them resources and information so they can be participating in our economic system and our society.
Very key. Very key, because I think that's something, and sometimes it doesn't matter how long you've been here. As a small business myself, sometimes I find myself learning things that I had no clue how they worked. And if they're not in, for many communities, if it's not in Spanish, that's another barrier. So I think that it's super special to see the work of Mujeres Latinas, because it's almost, for me, I see it as, you're holding someone by the hand. You're saying, welcome to this country. We appreciate you. You're part of the system. Let me teach you how this works. And let me teach you, because that's how you become also civically involved. You start not only helping yourself and making your life better, but then you say, you know what? And remember this, whatever people, how they help you, we should always, always find a way to also lend a hand and give back to. So I think that's amazing about Mujeres Latinas. It has that vision. And how can they find Mujeres Latinas? There's Facebook, Mujeres Latinas.
There's Facebook, there's Instagram. We have a website, www.mujereslatinasbroward.org.
Perfect.
And you can sign up, and we can send you all the information, all the things, activities that we're doing, the different initiatives that we are involved in. So there's always things that we can help you with.
Okay.
That's what we're here for.
Awesome. So I can't wait to see the pictures you brought.
So you mentioned that, you wanted me to bring pictures of things that I thought, well, first of all, is my family today.
Okay.
So my family is my kids, my granddaughters, my son, my daughter, my husband, 48 years. So
I love Fredo.
yes.
And then you have a beautiful family.
Yeah, those that's what I value most, and that's what I always. Everything it surrounds them. Everything I do, it's it's because of them, and I get a lot of support from them, all of them, especially my husband.
Yes, that's for sure.
And this was a picture of my mom when she was working as Doctora Marisa in the David Boulevard drugstore. That's what it was called. And so it was a drugstore, like a family drugstore, from what we used to know as drugstores in the United States before we had Walgreens and CVS and all that stuff. So, people would come in and pick up medicines, but, they would also pick up, household things that you need. So it was kind of a 7-Eleven kind of store. I don't know if it's 7-Eleven or there is another name for that. And this was Mom, a few years ago, and she always was, she always had a good spirit, and that was my granddaughter, my first granddaughter.
It's a beautiful picture.
Yeah. So
hugging her.
Yeah, and we miss her a lot because she passed away only a couple of years ago, so we still miss her a lot. And that's it.
Let me see this one. I want to see. Is this Fredo with?
Yeah.
Oh, this is such a cute picture. Where are you at? It looks like Italy.
That's in Florence.
Like a Vespa in the back.
We were newlyweds and we were living there.
I love this.
And then there's people that have been, people that have shown me a lot. And this is me and my mother-in-law, Flor. She was an amazing woman, and she taught me a lot.
This is you?
Yeah, that's me.
Oh wow, beautiful.
And I bring her up because she was a very humble woman who had 6 children back in the 40s, and she built a school in her house in Caracas. And so she would turn her house into a school, an elementary school in the day, and then at night, her children would pick up everything, and the house will turn into a home. So she worked very hard, and she brought up her 6 children who became professionals and went to the university and graduated. And she always had that spirit of fighting, and so of doing things and always taking care of others. So, and then she ended up being a great cook. So she did it through food. So that's what I bring her. And I had so many other people that were, have been part of my life. My aunts. There's always people that teach you something that are there for you, which is important. And that's why one of the things that Mujeres Latinas does is also mentoring for Latina girls in middle schools, because those are special years for girls, and they need all the help they can. So I always say that I had the privilege of having aunts and other older women who would help me, listen to me, guide me, through those teen years. And that's some of the things that we do in Mujeres Latinas. Yes. And so we have volunteers who are Latinas who are doing that with girls that need that extra help.
Extra help. And especially when you have parents working 2-3 jobs, they need to know that there is someone that cares about them, that cares about who they are, and that you don't know, this can be the next person that's going to make a difference in the world and in this country, in this county, in this state. So Ana Valladares, I want to thank you, because we haven't covered even half of your story, but I want to say thank you. My family had worked a long time as missionaries, and it's funny how often many people don't take the time to say Thank you. So on behalf of our Hispanic and Latino community, thank you for being so selfless. Thank you for your love for others. Ana Maria Valladares is the type of person that you open the door and there's a little gift from her or a little card that says, hey, I'm thinking of you. I hope you have a happy day. And we need more people like that. So this is for you to meet Ana Maria Valladares. Thank you for being here in Mujeres Interesantes because she is definitely a very interesting woman. Thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn. It was a pleasure being with you here today.
Likewise.
And we have a lot more things to talk about.
Another show. Bye-bye.